Asahi is a disgusting sweaty-ass loser of a high school kid who always gets bullied by his friends for being a blabbermouth who can't keep any secrets. Being a beta male, he is a virgin who never had a girlfriend in his life and got rejected by girls even before proposing to them. But all of this changes when he accidentally stumbles upon the secret of this green-haired girl that he has a crush on. Asahi is notorious for not being able to keep secrets. But on the flip side, he is a bad liar as well and ends up always telling the truth. This quality makes him attract a lot of friends who make fun of him but rely on him at the same time. One day, while playing a game of poker face with his friends, Shima, Oka and Sakura, Asahi says that he is a different man and can now keep secrets without fail. But then, he proceeds to get his ass handed over to him in the game by his friends who call him a basket with massive holes. Everyone comes to him for honest opinions and people stop discussing important matters whenever he walks past them. He feels bad for himself, but his friends reassure him that it is a good thing as well because they can always trust him with the truth. Later that day, while taking their English class, Asahi thinks to himself and says that even though he is famous for being a blabbermouth, there is one secret that he has been able to keep for almost a year now. Just then, the teacher tells a fellow student named Yoko to stand up and read the passage from the textbook. This is when Asahi looks at her and thinks that in reality he is in love with this girl and has kept that a secret for all this time. He says that she is really mysterious and beautiful to him. She always comes before everyone in the morning, spends her breaks alone, and leaves the school last. He keeps staring at her back while wondering about her, and they both end up having an eye contact as she sits back down. This makes Asahi really embarrassed like the beta male he is, and he ends up jumping to his friend on the side and starts making dumb excuses for causing a ruckus. Shima tells him to calm down and sit back in his seat, but he ends up worrying too much about keeping his secret a secret and forgets to listen to his teacher telling him to answer her question. She knocks him back to reality by shaking him around, but the class rep, Aizawa, calms them both down as the class resumes. For the rest of the classes, Asahi spends his time looking at Yoko and wonders why she is always alone and gets hit by a football during sports time because of that. After classes, Oka asks him when he is planning to confess to Yoko. Hearing this, Asahi spits his drink out and asks how did he know, and all of his friends reply that it was pretty obvious from how he always looked at her and that they have known about it for almost a year now. This makes Asahi lose all hope in himself, but then he carries himself up and says sorry for hiding it from them for so long. Shima and Sakura say that it's fine and everyone has a secret or two that they don't like to share, but Oka says that it is indeed a problem and reminds him of the time when he got rejected by Aizawa even before he managed to propose to her because he was so obvious about liking her. He tells him to make a difference this time and to confess his feelings before he gets rejected out of nowhere. They all join together and tell him that they will be there to console him afterwards and pushes him to go confess, which makes Asahi realize that he has surrounded himself with a bunch of scumbags who can't even entertain the possibility of his proposal getting accepted. Still, he thanks them all and says that he will go and confess his feelings today and decides to go to the classroom to give a love letter to Yoko. Meanwhile, Shima and Sakura discuss how Yoko is famous for being unapproachable, so there isn't any hope, but Oka asks if they haven't noticed it. But Yoko also stares at Asahi quite often, which makes them both surprised. Back at the classroom, Asahi prepares himself to deliver the letter in person, and opens the door to talk to Yoko, and ends up looking at Yoko stretching her arms and demonic-looking wings in full view. She also seems to have a few bats flying around her, and her mouth seems to have a couple of fangs, and this makes him utterly shocked. They both look at each other and let out a loud scream. Yoko immediately hides her wings and fangs and asks if he saw anything, and Asahi tries to lie, but his facial expressions make it too obvious. Back at the benches, Oka and the others wonder if Asahi decided to cry alone after getting rejected, but then his childhood friend and the president of the newspaper club, Akemi, shows up and asks where Asahi was. She says that she was looking for a scoop and tells them to fess up the information, but they all decide to run away to save their asses. On the other hand, Yoko tells Asahi that in reality she is a vampire and always tries to keep her identity hidden by not interacting with others too often and talking to them in a polite manner to hide her fangs. Asahi asks if she wouldn't turn into ash from the sunlight, but she explains that all that is bogus made by Hollywood, but she does get a really bad tan if she stays under the sun for too long. That's why she comes early and leaves really late, as she doesn't want to come to the school with a horrible tan every day. Hearing this breaks the whole mysterious persona that Asahi had in his mind around her, and he realizes that she is just a normal girl with some unique problems. She asks him what he thinks about her being a vampire, and he says that he thinks it's cute, showing that he is a true man of culture. She says that she thought he knew about it already, as he is always staring at her, and Asahi realizes that she's not only a normal girl, but also really bad at picking up others' feelings about herself. She further adds that she was happy to know that her last day at school was with him, and explains that her father had put a condition on her that she would have to come back home if someone found out about her true identity. And now that he knows about it, she will have to leave. She says that getting to enjoy the normal school life was fun, but this makes Asahi really sad as he thinks back on her behavior and how she always avoided everyone and never seemed to have any friends. He says that even though he is a broken drum that can't keep a tune in his stomach, he would try his best to keep this one secret about her identity, and if she would allow it, he would like to be her friend. And just like that, he friend-zones himself even before confessing his feelings to her. This makes Yoko really happy, and she starts crying as she never had a friend in her school life, and says that if he doesn't mind, she would love to be his friend as well. After that, they both decide to stay late at the school until the sun's down and then go home. On their way out, Asahi tells her that he also has a secret that he is keeping from her, and that he would love it if she hears him out when he decides to reveal it to her. Meanwhile, we see Aizawa sitting in some high-tech sci-fi machine with a bunch of flying screens as she records Asahi and Yoko walking out of the school so late and wonders what they were doing there at this time. Asahi and Yoko end up walking home together, and Asahi mentions how he is nervous about his ability to keep secrets. Yoko says that for her, her school life ended when he found out about her true identity, but despite their differences, Asahi accepted her and even offered to become her friend, and there's nothing out there that brings more joy to her than that. She further adds that as long as Asahi is trying his best, it's enough for her, and even if one day her secret comes out in the open because of him, she would be fine with it. This makes Asahi feel at ease, and he promises her to do his best once again as they go back to their homes. Meanwhile, Aizawa ends up following them for a good bit of their walk and wonders what they were talking about. The next day, Sakura and the others ask Asahi about his confession and how it went. They bet on him getting rejected, but he reveals that they are now friends. Just then, the class teacher walks in and Aizawa stands up and tells her that she is 1 minute and 34 seconds late and that it would reflect badly on her career as a teacher. The teacher tells her to stop cooking and to sit down as it is holding their lecture even longer. Shima makes fun of her and says that the class rep is as strict as always and calls her the Iron Lady. After that, we see Aizawa look at Asahi and think back on last summer when she called him out at the back of the school and told him to stop staring at her. She tells him that she has not even an atom of interest in him, and continuing to try would be like fighting a lost battle, and then to finish him off. She tells him that failure is the first step to success, and so he should go and find himself a new path. She then says that it has been quite some time since then, and he did end up taking her advice and finding a new path in the form of Yoko. But for some reason, this still makes her really mad, and she can't point out why. She then wonders if she misunderstood the whole situation that summer, as she never let him say anything, and wonders if he actually did love her or not at the time. This overthinking further turns into conspiracy as she wonders if he knows about her secret and decides to confront him about it during lunch break. She calls out to him and asks him to clarify if he really did love her back then. This makes him really confused, but he says yes, and she feels relieved. However, this incident attracts a lot of attention as his friends walk up to them and ask if Aizawa was trying to confess her feelings to him, but she outright denies that and says that pathetic men like Asahi makes her feel sick, and asks what kind of a disheveled donkey falls for another girl right after getting rejected by one. All these comments hit Asahi straight through his soul, and his friends drag him away while telling the class rep to calm down as the poor man got friend-zoned just the other day. Later that day, after classes, Asahi goes to the classroom with Yoko and watches her have her lunch. It turns out she doesn't eat it during the lunch break to hide her fangs, and this often leaves her stomach grumbling like a hungry ogre. While watching her eat, Asahi says that he is glad to know that she can eat normal things because he thought vampires only fed on blood. Hearing this, she calls him stupid and says that it's not his fault to not know what's common sense for vampires, as he's not one. After that, she explains that sucking someone's blood is a really sensual and sacred thing that they do at their weddings. Sucking blood essentially means that the two individuals are bonded for eternity, and that's their way of marrying each other. Hearing this, Asahi's weebish masochistic tendencies wake up, and he wishes to have his blood sucked out by her. But then Yoko says that she is craving something sweet and ends up surprising Asahi, who hits his desk and a bag of cream puffs fall out of it. He wonders how they got in there while Yoko asks him if he brought them for her as a surprise. With that, she takes a bite out of one of them and ends up burning her tongue with insane spices. She unleashes her wings and fangs and starts beating her head against the wall, while trying to tolerate the spice, and Asahi looks at the cream puffs and notices that they all seem to be messed up, and one of them even seems to be moving on its own. She decides to go get some water for Yoko to help her with the spiciness and opens the door, but gets surprised to see Aizawa standing right in front of him. She also seems surprised to see him and asks what he was doing there so late, and then looks behind him to notice Yoko with her wings and fangs and gets shocked. Asahi tries to defend Yoko's secret and begs that Aizawa keep it hidden as well, but suddenly the back of Aizawa's head opens up and a mini Aizawa with an antenna on her head pops out of there with an alien gun pointed at them and asks Yoko which planet she was from. This surprises both of them, and Yoko walks up to her in excitement and asks all sorts of questions about her appearance and small size. Mini Aizawa says that they are using this planet as their base of operations and asks which branch she belonged to. But Yoko says that she's just a vampire, and Asahi reminds her that she let the cat out of the bag once again. With that, they both sit down feeling depressed about revealing their secret identities so easily. Asahi turns towards the class rep and asks who she was, and she explains that she is an alien, and the big body was actually her robot, which she used to blend in with the humans. Her species has been scouting Earth in secrecy, and as they didn't mention anything about getting found out by vampires, so she should be fine. Asahi calls her out for splitting hair, but she turns to him and says that unfortunately, she will have to erase his memory related to her secret, as his emotions are clearly written all over his dumb face. Asahi asks if she can actually do that, and she says yes while pulling out a heavy hammer out of her alien secret storage. She then tries to strike him down in one hit, but he dodges it and goes into Ultra Instinct to dodge all of her attacks. He says that he is pretty sure that it's just a normal hammer, and she says that she read about it in the manga of this world that hitting someone on their head with a hammer erases their memories. Asahi continues to run away as Aizawa chases him down, and even asks Yoko if she was fine with him knowing her secret. While following him, she tells him that she can remove his memories regarding Yoko's secret as well, and this makes him stop. He thinks about it for a moment and sits down and says that it would be better for everyone if he forgets about it, and asks her to make it as painless as she can. Aizawa compliments his resolve and prepares to knock him out, but Yoko flies in and saves him at the last moment and cries that she already told him how happy she felt about him accepting her and how she is fine with him keeping her secret safe. This makes Aizawa feel happy for Asahi as well, and she decides to trust him with her secret as well. Later that night, we see Akemi pull out a recorder from one of the evil-looking cream puffs that she hid in Asahi's desk and starts smiling like a maniac. The next morning, Asahi walks inside the school and thinks that he should avoid Aizawa to reduce the chances of him letting the cat out of the bag. Just then, he notices Akemi talking to his friends near the water hoses. She has them all tied up and is asking them about him and Yoko and their relationship, but they are keeping it a secret and getting bullied by her. When they refuse to tell her anything, she turns on the water in the hoses and makes it look like they are all peeing fountains. She says that she would love to have them on the front page of her newspaper, but for now, that spot should go to Asahi, and then turns around to ask him if it was right. After that, she greets him and asks if he had something to tell her and shows him the recording that she got out of the cream puff, which cuts off just before they discuss anything related to Yoko or Aizawa's secrets. She asks him about the nature of their relationship, but Asahi immediately runs away and Akemi starts chasing after him for her scoop. Asahi says that he won't ever tell her anything as she has bullied him throughout their childhood, and thinks back on the times when she made a story about him wetting his bed and the spot showing the map of Atlantis. Another time, she posted his first love letter on the student board in the hallway and continues to make his life miserable. She says that he already knows that he can't get away from her and pulls a water pipe out of Akemi's secret storage and binds him down as well. She then shows him a recording of Yoko asking Asahi if they were alone in the room, and Asahi confirming it, and says that this would be enough to cook up a spicy story, but she wants more from him. Asahi says that they are just friends, but Akemi doesn't buy it and leaves him spinning in front of everyone with the water turned on. She says that she will go ask Yoko herself if he doesn't want to spill it and runs away, and Asahi follows after her into his class. Once there, he notices that Yoko isn't present and wonders if her secret got out, and she decides to leave the school and asks the teacher where she was. The teacher tells him to calm down and reveals that Yoko had a fever, so she was taking the day off. She then gives him her homework and tells him to pass it on to her, as it looks like they are good friends. Meanwhile, Akemi spies from outside the classroom and finds out that Asahi was going to Yoko's house. After school, she starts chasing after him once again, but Aizawa saves him by pulling him in a bush and asks what was up. He tells her everything and says that he will have to get someone else to go to Yoko's house to deliver her homework, and Aizawa asks what was wrong with him going himself as he's not really dating Yoko. Asahi says that he doesn't want any bad attention to come to her, and that's why he can't risk Akemi seeing him go to her house. Aizawa thinks about it for a bit and says that she would help him because according to her research from reading the manga of this world, she knows that if a guy and a girl are allowed to be alone without any hurdles they often end up dating, and she can't have that happening on her watch. But then Akemi finds them and starts chasing after Asahi again. Aizawa stands up and stops Akemi and tells Asahi to run away. He eventually arrives at Yoko's house and gives her her homework. She seems to have been cleaning her room in a rush before he arrived and hides the duster in her hand behind her, saying she likes to keep her room neat and clean. She then invites him inside and Asahi notes how she keeps her wings and fangs out when she's home. They both sit down and Yoko reveals that this is the first time she has lived alone, and that he can feel free to check everything out excluding her cupboard because she totally didn't shove all the mess that was in her room in it. They both sit down and have some tea and talk about dumb topics like how coffins are considered luxury beds for vampires and how she lives a simple life here. But then Aizawa calls Asahi and tells him that Akemi managed to get out of her clutches and is headed straight for Yoko's house. Asahi hears her loud and clear and gets out of there just in time, but then he hears a loud bang from inside the house and goes in to find Akemi lying on the floor with a lot of mess over her from Yoko's cupboard. It turns out she Tarzaned her way inside her house through the window and urged to see if Asahi was hiding in the cupboard and got buried under all the mess. Later that night, Akemi makes up a fake spicy story about Asahi and Yoko being alone in Yoko's house and having tea together and posts it on the student board in front of Asahi the next day. She tells him that he should tell her all the secrets he knows or else she would post it, but Asahi rips the poster apart and starts running after her to get the pictures in her camera. On his way, he runs into Yoko, and when she asks why he was running around in the hallways, he says that there was nothing to worry about and runs down to find Akemi. He also runs into Oka, who tells him a secret about Akemi and says that if it comes to it, he should use it to get her to back down. After that, Asahi follows her to the rooftop and Akemi teases him by holding a bunch of those fake posters in the air and wondering what would happen if she threw them down and people got to see them. Asahi gets on the ground and begs her to not do it, and even though she thinks about it for a moment, she calls him naive and says that if he's begging this much, then there must be some big reason behind it, and she wants to know that. When there seems to be no other way, Asahi decides to use the secret that Oka told him about and tells Akemi that it's fine and she can go right ahead and post that story. He further adds that he would love it and starts building up on this narrative. It turns out Akemi just likes to bully people, and if it's a story that will do good for them, she won't ever post it in her newspaper. She ends up falling for it and runs away calling him a jerk, and we see Asahi talking to Oka about it. Oka says that even though she comes out as a bully, Akemi might actually be a good girl who's just putting up a facade. She tried to ask for his permission till the last second and also included it in the fine print that this story was made up. They wonder why she would need to do all this, and we get to see Akemi sitting all by herself on the stairs and talking to herself. It turns out she was talking to her glasses and they seem to be possessed by some kind of godly spirit, but she insists on not believing that. She also seems to have a weird crush on Asahi, but it looks like she has come to terms with it and has decided to keep their relationship as such where she is the bully and Asahi is her prey. A few days later, we see Asahi sitting down in his class as the teacher goes through an English lesson. While reading the chapter, she looks at Shima and catches him looking at a spicy magazine that Master Roshi and Sanji would like. She asks him what it was, and he decides to throw Asahi under the bus just like your typical good friend and says that he got it from him. Even Yoko gets surprised and Asahi tries to defend himself, but it doesn't work. The teacher says that she will be confiscating the magazine for scientific purposes and tells the class rep to deal with these two. But then she looks at Aizawa's seat and finds out that it's empty. Her stuff is still on the table, and the students say that they saw her there in the free period before that. The teacher wonders where she could have gone without telling anyone, but then continues with her lessons like the irresponsible adult she is. Just then, Asahi feels someone glaring at him and turns out to find if he can see someone and ends up noticing Mini Aizawa trying to grab his attention like a cockroach. He starts panicking, but she walks up to his feet and tells him to go out of the class so she can talk to him. Asahi feels stressed, but then he decides to get up and asks permission to go to the toilet. The teacher tells him to hold it, so he doubles down and says that he gotta do the big business, and if she doesn't let him go, they would be dealing with some Mexican mess here. With that, the teacher lets him out and Aizawa apologizes to Asahi as he had to sacrifice his social life to help her. She then explains that she needs his help with recharging her robot body, and Asahi gets surprised to know that it is based on such old technology like traditional batteries. She tells him that it is his fault because when she decided to go out and recharge the batteries during the free period, she stumbled upon him having a conversation with Yoko about doing something 5 times at night, and Yoko feeling really exhausted and liking it. She completely misunderstands the conversation and says that she didn't know that they were this far along in their relationship. But Asahi says that he has no idea what she is talking about because they were talking about a movie DVD that he gave to Yoko, and she liked it so much that she ended up watching it 5 times in the night, and that's why she was so exhausted. This makes Aizawa feel even more embarrassed, and she tells him to forget about everything she told him. With that, they move on to the topic of Aizawa's robot body, and she tells him that it is inside a stall in the girls' washroom. She says that it should be safe because the classes are still going on, and has him pick up the robot body and bring it to the infirmary. Asahi goes in and picks it up and notices how it feels soft and warm just like a real human being, and seeing her body being carried by Asahi makes Aizawa feel embarrassed as well. Once they are out, they run into Yoko and go to the infirmary to charge the robot body together. After that, Aizawa thanks them and says that she would go ahead and see if the hallway was clear, as she doesn't want anyone starting rumors about them both doing something bad in the infirmary all by themselves. The pair thanks her and wait for her to come back, but then they hear Akemi scream from the hallway and run out to see what happened. Once there, they find her holding Mini Aizawa in her hand, which shocks the living daylights and bat wings out of them. She wonders if it's one of the 7 wonders of this school, called the Hallway Fairy, but then wonders why it looks like the class rep. She then thinks that it's an action figure, but says that it looks too real to be one. Asahi doubles down on this idea and says that it is indeed an action figure and tries to change the topic by asking her about the other wonders of the school. Akemi reveals that the other wonders include the Phantom Horned Lady, the Pervert of Light, and even an after-school vampire, and asks if they knew something about that. This makes both of them start sweating their pants off, but the Akemi says that she would love to get a scoop on any of these legends and instinctively peeks under Mini Aizawa's skirt like a weave of culture. She says that it's just the first instinct for anyone to do that with an action figure, and that whoever made it must be a pervert, as this model can even be undressed. The whole thing makes Aizawa really freaked out, and to make things worse, Shima joins the scene and Akemi offers him to take a peek as well. This is when Asahi jumps in and says that he is the pervert who created that action figure and snatches it from Akemi's hands and runs away. Shima and the girls follow after him with all their questions, and Asahi eventually manages to run away from them and hides inside the sports store. While trying to block the door off, we see a horned girl do some magic in her office, and it makes the bag that Asahi is carrying really heavy. The girl does her magic again, and it turns Aizawa as large as a normal human being, but with her antenna as well that glows only when she has feelings for someone. The whole transformation makes them both freak out, and they even end up falling over each other, but soon get knocked back to reality when they hear Akemi and Shima's voices outside the door. It looks like they are prepared to break in, so Asahi tells Aizawa to hit him really hard and pretend as if she found him with the action figure and was disciplining him for indecency. Aizawa struggles to do this to the man who saved her and kept her secret safe as well, but eventually knocks him out of the room and sends him flying like an NPC with a heavy punch. She then shrugs and runs away from everyone while they go to Asahi and try to console his socially dead ass. On the other hand, Aizawa decides to go back to the infirmary to see her robot body, and we see the horned girl release her magic, and it turns Aizawa back to her mini size. Later that evening, Asahi explains everything to Yoko on their way back home, and we see Aizawa feeling happy to see them together, but at the same time feeling conflicted about her unexplained and newfound feelings for Asahi. A few days later, Asahi ends up running into Yoko while going to the school. He asks her if it wasn't late for her as she gets that bad tan when the sun is out, but she says that it's fine because according to the forecast, it will be raining all day today. With that, they both head towards the school, and by the time they reach it, we see the sky as clear as it can be with the sun out in all its glory. Asahi and Yoko walk up to Aizawa, who notices how Yoko changed ethnicities overnight and asks if she was out trying to buy an N-word pass. After hearing her out, she lectures her on the tanning effect of the UV rays and says that she should have been the one to know about it the most. After that, she asks if she was telling the truth and wasn't covering up for a trip she made to the beach, but Yoko shows her tan lines that are in the form of her uniform. Asahi, being the man of culture he is, ends up taking a peek and earns a hard slap across the face from Aizawa. With that, she tells Yoko that the UV rays must be like bullets to her skin and says that it reminded her of her training back home. Yoko says that she would be fine once she takes a nap, but adds that she is really interested in this training of hers and wishes she could have tried it. This makes Aizawa really happy, and she decides to train Yoko in the ways of her alien survival, so she can dodge the sun rays and protect herself from getting a bad tan. With that, they go to the school's pea ground and start training. Aizawa explains that Yoko must remain in the shadows and walk from shadow to protect herself from sun rays. Yoko gets all serious and waits for the sun rays to stop so she can hop to the next shadow, but it turns out just as dumb as it sounds, and they decide to compromise and simply tank the rays and walk from shadow to shadow. This training continues throughout the evening, and Aizawa ends up spending the night at Yoko's house as well. The next morning, Asahi runs into them while the sun is out and wonders what Yoko was doing out there. Aizawa explains that her training has finished and tells her to show them what she has learned. With that, Yoko starts running towards the school while sticking to walls and other objects that cast shadows. She becomes a true shadow ninja in exchange for her social life, but then she faces the huge hurdle of a street vendor selling garlic and crosses. Asahi takes out his vampire research book and reads that garlic can make vampires blind, and immediately eats the sample the vendor is offering himself, but when he asks if he was trying to fill up on his stamina for a spicy night, Asahi spits the whole thing out on the man's face. After that, he grabs the cross and throws it away, but a dog catches it and brings it back to Yoko. Asahi starts screaming, but to his surprise, Yoko grabs the cross and reveals that looking at it just makes her feel a tiny bit anxious, and the garlic makes her eyes watery. After that, they continue walking towards the school with their noses closed to avoid breathing Asahi's nasty beta male garlicky breath, but it all comes to an end when they come across a long road without anything around it to cast shadows. Yoko sighs in defeat and says that it wasn't possible for her to join them on their morning walk after all, and that she would suck it up and come to school early like always. Asahi and Aizawa feel sorry for her as well and come up with absurd ideas like wearing a spacesuit or a black latex suit to avoid UV rays. Aizawa even suggests making a robot body for her like hers, but Asahi rules it out for it being too big for her to wear it. After that, they wonder if there is some kind of sunscreen that vampires can wear, but say that if there was they wouldn't be in this situation in the first place, while looking at Yoko, but her sweaty face implies otherwise. To protect her face, she decides to lie to them and says that there isn't a sunscreen like that, and they run off to school. But then the next morning, Asahi and Aizawa see Yoko playing in broad daylight without any tan and chase after her for answers, and she eventually reveals that the thought of using sunscreen never came across her mind, but now it's all good. The next weekend, Yoko invites Asahi to an amusement park, and he wonders if it was a date, but then Yoko shows up and says that she invited him and Aizawa to go to the amusement park together because she never went to one due to her tanning situation. But now that it's solved thanks to them, she wants to share this experience, but unfortunately it looks like Aizawa won't be able to make it. On the other hand, we see Aizawa drinking some milk in her apartment and saying, "You are welcome" to Asahi, as she thinks that this would make for a perfect date for the two of them. Back at the amusement park, Yoko takes Asahi to a roller coaster ride, and they both end up screaming like pregnant ducks and get pretty scared afterwards. But it looks like Yoko has gotten addicted to thriller rides, and she opts for even crazier rides the next time. After having a lot of fun together, they stop by for some ice cream, and Yoko says that she has always wanted to come here even if alone because this is the place where her parents had one of their first dates. She explains that she is a half vampire, half human, and her father is the vampire. It was truly a story out of a girl's manga for her parents, as they went to the same school as well and lived together while keeping his identity a secret, and that's why she decided to get admission in their school as well. She almost makes a connection of them being similar to how she and Asahi are, but then they both get embarrassed and turn away. After that, they go to a haunted house and end up running into a guy pretending to be a vampire, and as he says that he will suck their blood, Yoko snaps on him and tells him how rude it is to say that to someone he doesn't even know. With that, they call it a day and head back home, and Asahi wonders if there are other mythical creatures like wolfmen etc. where Yoko lives. Yoko says that there are, and one of her childhood friends is a wolfman, and this makes Asahi really surprised, and he starts worrying about this male childhood friend of hers. But Yoko tells him to not worry about him. On the other hand, we see Yoko's father calling the said friend to his house, and he tells him to go investigate Yoko and Asahi and confirm if her secret is safe with him, and if he thinks that it's not, then he is to immediately end her school life and bring her back home. The wolfman agrees and says that he wants him to let him marry Yoko if he brings her home. Back at the road leading to the amusement park, we see Asahi and Yoko walking together, and they run into a white-haired wild-looking man. The guy seems to know Yoko, and he walks up to her while complaining about her not answering his calls. Yoko calls him Shiro and asks what he was doing there. Asahi wonders who this rugged guy was and why he was being so familiar with Yoko, and wonders if he was perhaps the childhood friend she was talking about. Meanwhile, Yoko tells Shiro that she does in fact call him, but it's always Shiho on the other side, so it's not her fault. The guy then asks her what she was doing out in the sun, and even picks a bone with Asahi, asking him who he was staring at, but Yoko calms him down by throwing a stick in the air and making him instinctively fetch it for her like a dog. The guy then breaks the stick and turns around to ask her what she was doing out here with that guy, but then he looks at the amusement park behind them and connects the dots that they must be dating and starts getting really mad. Asahi worries for his life, but then Shiro turns out feeling really sad and turns around to tell Asahi to take good care of Yoko with tears in his eyes. Asahi quickly realizes that Shiro also likes Yoko, but is also a man of honor and is trying to give him way, but being the beta male he is, he walks up to him and says that they are just friends and that's all. Yoko hears it as well and instantly gets what they were talking about and defends herself by saying that another girl was supposed to be with them as well, but she bailed out at the last moment, and that they are just friends, and that there is no way she would be doing that with a guy like Asahi, and all these remarks knocks Asahi's heart and soul out. After hearing this, Shiro turns towards Yoko and asks her if Asahi was a normal human. When she confirms, he turns around and apologizes to him for being rude to him earlier, but then gets really close to him and asks why he wasn't shocked after seeing his fangs. This makes the couple shocked, and Shiro explains that her father sent him there to see if her secret was still kept safe, and seeing how Asahi didn't react after seeing his fangs, he must have known about creatures like them. Things start looking really grim for them, but Asahi decides to put his life on the line once again for Yoko and grabs Shiro, and starts literally lying to his face. He grabs his collar and says that he doesn't know anything about anyone's secret, and tells him to stop accusing him of stuff he doesn't know about. Besides that, he says that he was shocked to see his fangs, but thought that it might just be a part of some new trending fashion. This makes him teary-eyed, and he argues back and asks him how he can mistake the one natural thing that shows that he is a wolfman for some fake. They both get in an absurd argument, but then Shiro says that he will prove that he is a true wolfman by looking at the full moon and turning into a hot woman. She introduces herself as Shiho and says that she is a wolfman, but right now in this form, she is just like a normal woman. She then teases him with her freshly baked buns and asks Yoko for a wrapper for them, which makes Asahi bleed a pool from his nose like Sanji and Master Roshi, and he falls down. On the other hand, we see Aizawa worry about rejecting Yoko's invitation to the amusement park and decides to go to her house with a homemade cake as an apology. On her way there, she thinks about various perverted scenarios between Asahi and Yoko which make her uncomfortable, but thinks he resolves to ship them till the end and gets her ass to Yoko's house. Meanwhile, Asahi and Yoko go to Yoko's house alongside Shiho, and she explains that she is a wolfman with two personalities that are opposite gendered. When they see the moon, they swap places, and while she also retains her consciousness when Shiro is up, he only remembers what he sees himself. Yoko warns Asahi about Yoko being a total pervert, but she starts flirting with him right in front of the vampire girl and makes her really jealous. Yoko tries to fight back by sitting beside Asahi and tells Shiho off, but when nothing works, she pulls out a picture of the full moon, which seems to also work on wolfmen, and she turns back into Shiro. Seeing himself right in Asahi's face, Shiro instantly backs off and starts arguing with him, and then says that he will grab Yoko and get out of there before he sees the full moon again. Asahi simply shuts him down with the picture and turns him into Shiho, who is not practically on top of him. Just then, Aizawa opens the door and wonders if she got the wrong house, but then she double-checks and asks Asahi what was going on and runs away, calling him a cheater. But then she thinks about it and says that it must be a misunderstanding and walks back in to find out what was happening for real. But this time she sees Shiro on top of Asahi and wonders if this is the BL she read about in Earth's manga. This makes her really weirded out, and she instantly runs away, and Asahi manages to accidentally turn Shiro back into Shiho as well. Being the pervert she is, she asks Asahi for a kiss and says that he can find out for himself if she is a woman or a man, but Yoko tries to stop her and says that he must be uncomfortable. Shiho asks if that was really all she was worried about and knocks Asahi out with her steam buns. She then walks up to Yoko and says that she is really bad at reading people and their emotions, and that's why she was worried about her. She then tells her to take care and says that she would leave before she turns back into Shiro by accident and causes trouble for them. The next day, Asahi and Yoko explain everything to Aizawa and clear up all the misunderstanding. But then they get the news that a new student is going to join their school, and it turns out to be none other than the perverted wolfman, Shiho herself. She immediately starts bullying Asahi with her bakery items and makes him bleed fountains from his nose. His friends Shima and Akemi don't leave this opportunity and get a lot of material out of it, but then Asahi manages to run away and eventually runs into Yoko. She asks him about his nose being red, but he says that it was nothing, and that Shiho was being Shiho and terrorizing everyone. While walking through the hallway, Asahi thinks about how he has encountered a half-vampire, a robot-controlling alien, and a gender-changing perverted wolfman in this school, so there can be even more weird creatures here. Just then, they both see a pink-headed girl walk past them, while carrying some candies and a pair of horns on her head. They both become shocked and decide to follow her and quickly notice how she is surrounded by a bunch of crows. Asahi says that she must be a mythical creature like Yoko and the others, but Yoko straight up walks to the girl and starts patting her head and calls her cute. She introduces herself as Akane and reveals that she is the younger sister of their class teacher, Akari. This makes Asahi really surprised, but he can't help but think about those massive horns on her head. Akane takes note of that and says that she knows what he wants to ask about, as lots of people ask her that when they first meet her, and then says that he must be thinking about how she is so short despite being a high schooler. This makes Asahi cry out in disbelief, so she says that he must want to ask about the second most popular thing that people ask her, and reveals that it's how she can eat so much candies without getting fat. Asahi looks at her in disbelief and says that's not it, and Yoko asks him why he is so hyper today. This makes Asahi wonder if she is trying to deliberately dodge the question, because it could be that Akane has a condition like hers where if her secret gets out she might have to leave her school life. But then she herself speaks up and asks if he was wondering about her horns with a dark aura around them. She then goes on to pull out one of the horns and says that it's a famous fashion accessory, and this makes both of them look at her shocked once again. With that, Akane starts walking away and teases Asahi with her demonic tail, but when he tries to show it to Yoko, it vanishes away. We find out that Akane is planning on messing with these two and likes confusing people in general, but then she runs into Akari-sensei and she holds her by her horns and punishes her for messing with her children. Akane tells her to let her go and how those were real horns, and she used illusionary tricks to make it seem that they were fake, and reveals her secret that she is a demon and it's normal for her to play tricks on humans. Akari looks at her with an annoyed expression and says that it's already embarrassing enough for her to see her great-great-grandmother in a school uniform, and with that they all go to the headmaster's office to talk about this matter. Akane reveals that she is the headmaster of this school, and was the one who allowed the admission of all these unique kids in her school. She knows about Aizawa being an alien and Yoko being a vampire and says that she has lived for thousands of years. She then releases her demonic aura and cracks the window behind them and says that they should address their seniors with respect, but Yoko tells her that it's fine to play pretend, but she should do it outside the headmaster's office. This makes her really mad, and she says that she would squeeze all the secrets out of Asahi if she wants to, but Yoko walks up to her and tells her to behave by giving her a bag of potato chips and a lollipop. Asahi takes this chance to confirm everything with Akari-sensei, and she says that she is speaking the truth, but adds that it's no wonder people would doubt her considering how she claims to be thousands of years old and being the headmaster of the school while looking like a tiny young girl. This makes Akane mad and Yoko lets out a squeak. Akane releases her aura and damages the things around them, but Akari tells her that she would deduct the cost of repairs from her salary, and this makes her go back to her seat like a good grandma and cry. Yoko pats her head and says that it's fine, but Akane becomes mad and tells her to stop treating her like a kid and calls her a babyish little brat. Yoko says that she isn't babyish and that her cool beauty look is too mature for her to understand. This makes Akane laugh, and they both get in a fight about their fashion design and mature tastes. Being the pervert she is, Shiho decides to join in as well, and they tie Asahi to a chair to see how much nose bleeding he would get from watching them to see who has a more mature taste. Shiho goes on to win all categories, while Yoko and Akane end up settling on a competition to see who can eat Akemi's toxic cream puffs without making a bad face. They both turn out to be equally bad at it and end up blowing the whole gymnasium with their demonic auras, making Asahi and Akari suffer as collateral damage. A few days later, Akari-sensei calls Asahi to the teacher's office and tells him that he has to take some supplementary lessons to make up for the cooking class that he missed yesterday due to his cold. Asahi says that doing it all by himself would be really tough and sad, but she says that he doesn't need to worry as there are some other students repeating the class as well. With that, she takes him to the cooking classroom and lets him meet his peer chefs, Yoko, Shiho, and Aizawa. Asahi feels happy to see all of them, but then he finds Yoko struggling with garlic, Shiho wondering how she can use those vegetables for fun, and Aizawa planning on what kinda animal she would hunt today. He tries to ask the teacher about it, but she simply ignores him and explains that they would be making curry today and that the principal has requested that the teachers eat the curry. She then tells him that they ain't expecting too much as long as it's something remotely close to a curry. She then asks him if he knows which one is sweet among sugar and salt and runs off when he answers right, saying she will be counting on him. He wonders what kind of mess he has gotten himself into and thinks back on the weird expressions his friends gave him when he mentioned regretting not being able to eat Yoko's cooking at school yesterday. He then walks up to her and she tells him how garlic makes her eyes watery. Asahi also asks Shiho about Yoko's cooking skills, and she says that Yoko is a fine cook as long as she doesn't lose her cool or get too excited. After that, Aizawa jumps in with a new recipe that she created using the holy scripture of this world called manga. She then masterfully and accurately follows the instructions and ends up making a chocolate cake, instead of curry, making everyone shocked and surprised about her dumb yet genius at the same time. She feels mad about her results and knocks the cake out of the window, which ends up falling over Akane, who happens to be walking by. She tastes the cake and instantly changes anime to Food Wars and notes that Aizawa made it. Meanwhile, Akemi notices her from behind the building and wonders if she is one of the 7 wonders of this high school and starts following her. On the other hand, Asahi and the others work together and manage to put together a decent curry with the exception of Rue. Yoko is about to add it in, but then Aizawa starts sulking about her failures and how she learned a lot of things today thanks to them helping her. She says that she would use these lessons and push herself beyond her limits, and to prove that she would create a new kind of Rue on her own. This excites Yoko as well, and she supports her, and they both end up turning the whole place into a poison-making factory. On the other hand, Akemi ends up using all of her monthly allowance to entertain Akane for an interview, but she refuses and Akari also finds them and decides to punish the headmaster for extorting a student. She takes her to the cooking classroom to find out how the curry was cooking, but after seeing the poisonous environment in the classroom, they both decide to walk off and order food in. The next day, Akane goes on a rampage and destroys Akari's room as well as some of her precious juice bottles and says that she wants her to tell Aizawa to make some chocolate for her. She explains that it was the most delicious chocolate she has ever had and threatens to destroy the planet if she doesn't get it. She then uses her demonic powers to summon an asteroid and makes it fly towards Earth, causing the whole world to go into panic mode. After that, she brings her and the students to the cooking classroom and explains how the fate of the world is now in their hands, and if they don't succeed then they will all turn into space dust. Yoko tries to play with Akane once again, but Aizawa suddenly receives a call from her home planet and becomes serious about this whole chocolate making thing. She explains that they have exactly 3 hours and 34 minutes left and starts working on her first batch of chocolates. Outside, we see the whole world panicking and NASA working on ways to deflect or destroy the asteroid before it collides with Earth. Everyone sticks to their screens as they look at this crucial event, which might as well be their last, while Yoko and the others work hard on making chocolate for the demon headmistress. Aizawa soon finishes her first batch of truffles. It makes Akane really happy, and she admires her masterpiece of a chocolate, but then Aizawa throws them all out and says that she can't use these low-level chocolates to save the whole world. With that, she starts working on her next batch, while Akane cries about not being able to get a taste of those beautiful-looking chocolate balls. Akari notices how even Akane can't keep her defenses up while controlling an asteroid and uses this fact to get some revenge on her. She ties her down to a chair and says that the asteroid would also go away if she falls unconscious, and then tells her to prepare herself to eat 3 hours worth of chocolates made by everyone except Aizawa. The whole torture mission starts off with a rotten chocolate banana and soon escalates to curry cubes and horn-shaped jelly made out of Akemi's deadly concoctions as she joins the party as well in hopes of getting her money's worth out of Akane. 3 hours later, they finally manage to knock her down and the asteroid turns around. Asahi rushes to the cooking class to find Yoko, but then he looks at the mess in there and decides to simply shut the door and walks away. A few days later, Asahi notes how days have become hotter while talking to Oka. Oka tells him to go and confess his feelings to Yoko or else years would go by, and he would still be lurking in the friend zone. He pushes him to go and ask her on a swimming pool date, but Asahi manages to turn it into a whole party by inviting Shiho and Aizawa as well, who call him an idiot and a loser respectively. He also finds out that Yoko can't swim, and reveals that he can't either, so they both decide to go and practice with each other. The next day, they all head towards the water park and public pools and enjoy their day being pervy gazers, getting arrested for misconduct and learning how to swim from Aizawa. After the park closes, Yoko tells Asahi to come to the school at night so they can practice at the pool together, and they manage to sneak in using a shortcut that Yoko's mother told her about. They spend the night pushing each other forward and come even closer. Meanwhile, Akane spies on them using her demonic powers and tells Akari that she remembers there being another vampire and human couple in the school at the time when she was a homeroom teacher like her, while referring to Yoko's parents, and wonders how her story would play out. A few days later, Asahi walks up to Yoko during lunchtime and asks if she would like to join them for lunch at a new cafe that recently opened up by the station. Yoko says that she would love to do that, but eating with everyone would be risky as they might see her fangs. But then her stomach grumbles and they decide to go anyway. Once there, they pick out a bunch of cakes and pastries, and Sakura asks Yoko about her living alone in her apartment and how it feels. She hides her fangs with her hand while eating and it all looks fine. But then Asahi notices her wings coming out of her back as she gets excited, and he becomes really nervous. He wonders how he should tell Yoko to hide them, but then gets an idea from Shima to use his phone to send her a message. Shima also sends him a perverted message about the waitress. Just then, the waitress walks up to them, and it turns out it's Akemi. At first, they are surprised to see each other there, but then Akemi tells Yoko about her new cream puffs that she made and names them Russian Cream Puff Z. Asahi thinks about the worst scenario where Yoko's secret gets out as she tries one of these cream puffs and says that he will try all of them on his own, making even Akemi worried for his sanity. Shima also offers to join, and they both end up losing their brains and soul to the cream puffs as expected. Just then, we also see Akame enter the shop, and she seems to have something evil cooking under the hood after seeing Akane's glasses up close. The next day, we see Akemi running around the school looking for her eyeglasses. She eventually runs into Asahi and tells them about it. Yoko worries for her, but Asahi tells her that the glasses weren't for her eyesight, but Akemi fights back and says that they are important to her while thinking about how Asahi gave them to her when they were kids, and says that she needs them to bring out her evil side. Hearing this, Asahi and Yoko wonder if not finding them would be the better idea after all, which makes Akemi mad, and she runs off to find them on her own. She eventually runs into Shiho, who seems to be looking for a piece of her uniform. After that, she gets confronted by Aizawa. She says that she is in debt to her because of her writing that article about her rejecting Asahi last summer, but to her surprise, Akemi apologizes to her and says sorry. She then asks her what she was doing there, and Aizawa explains that she heard about her losing her glasses from Asahi and Yoko, so she came there to help her find them. She thanks her and feels grateful for having such good friends, but then they both notice Akane standing on the side while wearing Akemi's glasses. They start chasing after her while she tries to stop them by creating lots of duplicates of her glasses and even making clones of herself wearing copies of said glasses. But then she runs into Akari, who pulls her and her clones inside a classroom and beats them up as punishment. Akemi ultimately gets her glasses back, but her secret of the glasses containing a spirit comes out in front of Aizawa. Later that day, they both sit beside the river and talk to the spirit, who claims to be a god of fortune and tries to prove it by telling them about a 4-leaf clover at their feet and a rainbow on the other side of the river. It also ends up revealing Akemi's past and her feelings for Asahi since childhood when she wanted to marry him. This makes Aizawa really surprised as she has feelings for him as well. Akemi starts banging her head on the bench in embarrassment and calls the spirit the god of misfortune, which makes it angry, and it ends up using its divine powers, and which makes Asahi walk up to them naturally alongside Yoko. They ask Akemi if she found her glasses and why she wasn't wearing them, but Akemi worries that glasses would tell Asahi about her feelings on their own. Aizawa knows about that as well, so she tries to save her by grabbing the glasses at the last moment, but it ends up making it look like Aizawa confessed her feelings to Asahi instead. When Yoko hears this, she decides to bring them both closer and makes a plan with Shiho. They call Asahi and Aizawa on the day of the Shrine Festival and make a plan about going together alongside their friends. But when the day comes, Asahi and Aizawa find out that they are there alone. They both instantly realize that it must be Yoko's doing and wonder if they should simply go back home, but Asahi suggests that they enjoy it now that they are there anyways. With that, they move on to see what the stalls were offering, and Asahi shows Aizawa around and teaches her about the festivals and games of Earth. She also tells him how they have similar celebrations in her home planet, and that it's such a wonderful thing that their species were able to communicate with each other like this. The night ends up being pretty amazing, and they have a lot of fun, but then they run into Yoko, who decided to spy on them in the start, but ended up forgetting about them as she got busy with gobbling up all the different kinds of food being offered at the festival. When she sees them, she starts running away. Asahi and Aizawa chase after her as well, but Aizawa trips over due to her dress, while Asahi tries to protect her. She ends up falling over him as her ice cream cones fall over his eyes, and Yoko and Akemi end up watching this like a scene from a suspenseful Indian drama. Akemi was enjoying the festival with her younger brothers, but after seeing Aizawa lying over Asahi, she starts tearing up and runs away. Meanwhile, Yoko seems to be feeling conflicted about this whole situation as well due to her unexplained feelings for Asahi. The next day, Asahi notes how Yoko is absent from the class and wonders where she went. He tries to ask Aizawa and Akemi, but they run away from him as well. Akemi asks her how he expects Yoko to behave after seeing him embrace Aizawa like that, and kicks him before telling him to go and find her before he loses her for good. Meanwhile, we see Yoko sitting in the headmaster's office in front of Akari and Akane. She seems to be out of it with her brain, acting like a pebble. Akane asks what this was all about, and Akari says that she doesn't know, but seeing her like this made her worried, so she brought her there. Akane tries to provoke her, but Yoko doesn't respond, and they realize that it must be something bad. Akane then asks her if seeing her man getting embraced by an alien really made her that worried, and Yoko suddenly speaks up and says that Asahi isn't her man. Akane says that it's obvious from how they hang out together all the time. Yoko tries to fight back and says that Asahi is just a nice guy to everyone and he has Aizawa and she supports them, but Akane picks on her disturbed face and tells her to forget about what Asahi thinks and asks her about her feelings. Yoko seems to be in denial and gets mad and walks out of the office. She tries to tell herself that it's not true and that she doesn't love Asahi like that, but then Akane teases her by using Shadow Clone Jutsu combined with Transformation Jutsu to show her how she and Asahi would look like as a couple. She continues to harass her like this all day, but then she gets caught by Akari. Akari picks her up from her horns and tosses her to the other side of the river, and then runs after her to deliver some divine judgment to her demonic ass. After that, Yoko ends up running into the real Asahi, but decides to run away from him instead of confronting her feelings. After that day, Yoko starts distancing herself from Asahi as she thinks that he loves Aizawa, and that her feelings are unjustified, so she should stop herself from becoming a bone between the relationship of her two good friends. On the other hand, Asahi's friends note that he seems to be down in the dumps and asks what is going on. He explains how Yoko has been distant and cold to him lately and worries that she might not want to be his friend anymore. They suggest he go ask her if they could walk together after school, and he can then talk to her and clear up any misunderstandings. Meanwhile, we see Aizawa struggle with her feelings as she resolves to clear this misunderstanding with Yoko and tell her that she isn't dating Asahi. But then she runs into Akane, who shows her a picture of her embracing Asahi on the Spirit Festival and offers to help her make her dream of dating him come true in exchange for her making a chocolate cake for her. But then Akari walks up to her and tosses her around and tells her to stop messing with the students and that she still has to work to pay off the repair expenses that came from her destroying her room. Once she's gone, Aizawa picks up the picture and says that she needs to destroy it, but decides to keep it for personal use. Just then, Asahi and his friends walk up to her and Akemi joins them as well and notice how she is trying to hide something from them. Akemi gets after her to see what it is, and the picture ends up being seen by all of them. Asahi asks her what it was about, but Akemi pulls out a couple of ice creams from her Akemi's secret storage and shoves it in his eyes. Asahi leans against the wall to keep himself from falling, but ends up doing a wall slam with Aizawa, and coincidentally Yoko ends up looking at him like this and walks away from there in sadness. The next day, they both try to talk to each other and Yoko tells him to come talk to her on the rooftop after school. Asahi discusses it with his friends and worries what it could be about, and they encourage him to go confess his feelings for her before he gets dumped for real. Just like at the start of the series, they show support for him and say that they would be there rooting for him and that he can cry to them if he gets rejected. Asahi gets up and starts running towards the rooftop to confess to Yoko, while Aizawa struggles with her feelings to the end. Akemi ends up giving her a push to fight for her feelings so she doesn't have any regrets in the future, and she decides to stop Asahi from confessing to Yoko using her special weapons like a shovel and banana peels. She also blocks his way with a bunch of school desks, but Asahi eventually gets over all of them and makes it to the rooftop. But as soon as he opens the door, he sees Yoko getting carried away by a huge bat as she apologizes to him and says her goodbye. That's why Asahi realizes that she wasn't trying to confess to him or reject him, but she was trying to say goodbye as her father found out about her secret. Seeing this, he turns around and looks at Aizawa and says that he needs her help to bring back Yoko. After that, they go to their teacher and tell her that Yoko was kidnapped. They all form a team consisting of Asahi, Aizawa, Shiho, Akane and Akari and head towards Yoko's family house. On their way, Akari mentions how she had to give up drinking beer for months to be able to afford this brand new car, and Akane says that she would give them a hand by making them reach Yoko's house before nightfall. She then knocks Akari out with her magic and makes the car fly up like a spaceship and gets them to the vampire mansion in mere hours. But in doing so, she ends up destroying the car, and when Akari wakes up she makes sure to punish Akane for this and makes her pay for it in full. On the other hand, Asahi, Aizawa and Shiho infiltrate the vampire mansion and walk inside trying to keep a low profile, but they end up encountering a giant vampire. Shiho tells them that that's Yoko's father, and they all start wondering how her human mother managed to survive him. The old man asks who they were and what their relationship was with his daughter. Just then, Yoko walks out and asks what they were doing there, and it looks like she has a sweet and sour relationship with her father, where he insists on never acknowledging her but loves her to bits as well. Aizawa instantly throws a ball of garlic powder at the old giant, and Asahi uses this moment to grab Yoko's hand, and they all run away. Once they are out, Yoko explains that she wasn't kidnapped and that her secret didn't get out. She further adds that her mother got a little sick and her father made a huge deal out of it and called her home to take care of her. Hearing this, they take a sigh of relief, but then the old man jumps out and finds out that Asahi and the others know about Yoko's secret and tells Yoko to come back home now. Aizawa throws a garlic ball once again and tells Asahi to run away, and this time Yoko takes him to her room and says that they should be safe there as according to the vampire rules. Her father shouldn't be able to walk in without her permission. Once inside, they talk to each other and Asahi clears up the misunderstanding about his relationship with Aizawa, and Yoko also tells him how he is her good friend, and for some reason she had been feeling anxious around him recently and apologies. Once all of this is cleared up, Yoko tells him that her father should give up by the next morning and they can leave once the sun is out. In the meantime, Yoko's father tries to get in, but Shiho brings her mother, and she starts chasing after the old man for being rude to Yoko's friends and damaging their house. Once he goes away, Asahi and Yoko think about how they might have to spend the night together in her room and out of nervousness try to look away from each other. But then Yoko becomes anxious about Asahi looking at her cupboard due to her poor cleaning habits, and she tries to cover it, but Asahi notices some stuff falling over Yoko from the top of the cupboard and decides to save her by pushing her down. Just then, Aizawa walks in and sees them flirting with each other and takes out her hammer to knock Asahi out for being a pervert. While dodging her attacks, Asahi gets the idea about erasing his memory in front of Yoko's father and making him promise to let her stay at the school because she has a lot of friends there. With that, they all walk up to him and Asahi presents the offer and makes him promise that if he erases all memories of Yoko, he would allow her to stay at school. The old man agrees and Asahi asks Aizawa to do it. She picks up the hammer, but then says that she can't do it, and Asahi takes the hammer from her and decides to do it himself. As he resolves and plans to hit himself, Yoko jumps at him and makes him throw away the hammer. She tells him how she doesn't want him to forget about her, and how she told him once before as well that if her secret gets out she is fine with it, because him accepting her even after finding out about her secret and even offering to become her friend was something really precious to her. Just then, they all notice Yoko's father fall down on the ground with a bump on his forehead, and it turns out the hammer hit his head after flying out of Asahi's hand, and he might have forgotten all about them knowing Yoko's secret. Yoko's mom walks in and takes care of her husband and treats the kids with some rice balls while feeling happy for her daughter. The next day, Akari comes to pick them all up in her new car that she got from Akane's money and apologizes to them for her students causing them trouble. Yoko's mom says that it was alright and tells them to visit them again sometime. They all say their goodbyes and Yoko sits down in the car as her tsundere dad refuses to say goodbye, but once they are on the road, he starts running after them while waving like a total dad. And that's how season 1 of Actually, I Am comes to an end.